Hey guys, back with another video. Another kind of video that I do every year, my top 10 movies of 2015. These usually come after the games, and this one was actually easier to put together than the games video. Getting that top 10 sorted out was, I think, a bit easier. But there's a lot of great movies in 2015. I thought the year started off pretty weak. I thought that 2015 started off fairly weak, but it got better towards the end and as we got into awards season. So yeah, I've got some honorable mentions and kind of dishonorable mentions at the end, but there's not too many movies that I saw this year that I hated, because with movies, again, like, the subject matter has to be interesting to me, and I know when a movie's going to be terrible, pretty much. Like 95% of the time, if a movie's going to be terrible or not, if I'm going to like it or not. And there's a lot of movies that came out this year that I saw like trailers of or whatever, and you know, like, I saw them, like, yeah, I know I wouldn't like that. Like, I know, like, the new Avengers movie came out this year, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to like that, so I'm not even going to bother seeing it. So, yeah, there's only a few movies that I actually saw this year that I hated. But, yeah, we'll jump right into things, and with number 10, which is The Revenant, with starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And this came out towards the end of the year. Only in limited release. It's not coming out in wide release until 2016, but this is a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed this one. It's brutal. It's definitely a brutal movie. Tons of really hard to watch violence in here, but like, Leonardo DiCaprio, like, this guy has never gotten an Oscar, and this is one of his best performances. I hope this might finally be the year where he gets one, but it's a really intense performance. Not too much dialogue. It's a very physical performance from him in this movie. The plot is fairly simple. It's your typical survival story, but it's just so well done. It's beautiful to look at. Like, the cinematography in this movie is just amazing. Like, some of the best in a movie all year, for sure. And it's very entertaining. It's a bit on the longer side. The only complaint I could really level against it is that the pacing is off in some spots. It drags at times, but overall, I think it's definitely gripping throughout. But it's weird. The reviews for this one, like, a lot of people were put off by, like, how harsh it was and the violence. Like, I don't think it's that bad. Like, I don't know. I think the reviews for it were kind of weird, but I don't know. I think it's really enjoyable. The director, I forget his name, but it's the director of Birdman, which was one of my favorite movies of last year. I think it was like number 2 for me. So this guy's on a roll, man. All of his movies are just incredible. I've heard the production, like the shoot for this, was just like really insane. Like, a lot of things went wrong, and it was a very intense shoot. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite movies of 2010 or 2015. Sorry. At number 9 is The Martian, one of the bigger movies of the year. This was a commercial success, and it did well in reviews. And this is from Ridley Scott, who I think has been, I don't know, he hasn't been all that great for quite a long time. In fact, the last truly fantastic movie I think he's done, at least in my opinion, was American Gangster with Denzel Washington. I know a lot of people liked Prometheus. A lot of people hated Prometheus as well. I was kind of in the middle with that movie. I thought it was okay. But this is fantastic. I loved this movie. It was actually a very nice surprise for me. It's, you know, again, it's sort of a simple story, but there's a lot of interesting science with it, and the script here is really good. It's really strong and very funny. Like, this movie surprised me with its humor, but Matt Damon plays the main character, and he's kind of mistakenly presumed for dead, left behind on Mars. And it kind of shows the efforts that NASA and Matt Damon's character take to try to get him back home. And it's not only fascinating and filled with all sorts of different kind of things that I wasn't sure. I don't know how accurate it is, like how a lot of like the scientific stuff that goes on, and a lot of like the, you know, the like the astronaut kind of stuff. I don't know how accurate a lot of that stuff is, but I'm pretty sure NASA kind of cooperated with the filmmakers on this. I don't know. It's based on a book, apparently, but it very entertaining. Like, this movie is just, like, from start to finish, extremely entertaining. A lot of tension, and you really want things to work out for Matt Damon's character, because it's a really likable character with a really strong performance from him as well. And like I said before, the humor with this movie was very surprising. Like, it's very funny, but it's also very dramatic as well. But yeah, a nice surprise. It's not like the most amazing movie out there. Like it didn't blow me away or anything. And there's a few little minor things that kind of bugged me about it with regards to its story. But overall, it's easily one of the more entertaining movies of the year for sure. And it's a huge surprise from Ridley Scott. And hopefully his next movie is great too. I think he's doing another Alien movie. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. But yeah, The Martian was a nice surprise for me. At number 8 is Inside Out, and this is another huge surprise for me. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be too surprising considering it's a Pixar movie, but kids' movies aren't usually movies that I tend to watch. I stay away from pretty much anything Disney, basically, but Pixar, I watch them from time to time, and Inside Out got, like, amazing reviews, and I have liked Pixar's movies in the past. I still need to see quite a few of their movies. Up and WALL-E are the big two that I've never seen that apparently are, like, masterpieces, but Inside Out was a huge surprise to me. Like, this movie kind of blew me away a little bit. I like, it's insanely creative, but it's also quite moving at the same time. It's got a very interesting story where it all takes place in the mind of a young girl, and you have like these personified, like these characters that are like personifications of her emotions. Like there's like, I think like fear, sadness, joy, anger, and then I think there was one more. But it kind of shows her kind of emotional states as she's kind of moving from Minnesota to San Francisco with her parents, and kind of what that's like for a little kid moving away and you losing your friends. And it's surprisingly emotional. Like I was kind of taken aback by how like the emotional core that this movie has and how moving it can be at times. It's also very funny, filled with tons of very interesting references. Like there's just a random Chinatown reference at the end of this film that just made me laugh so hard. And it was really surprising. I mean, I guess it's not a huge surprise because, again, Pixar's movies are like, they're those kind of movies that are, you know, aimed at both adults and children, and both children and adults can really enjoy these movies. And this is one of my favorite movies that they've done in a long time. Like, it's up there with, like, Toy Story, the Toy Story movies for me. I don't know, it just really surprised me. I definitely was not expecting to like it near as much as I did, but yeah, count me as very surprised. I definitely highly recommend it. It was a big hit. It did well commercially as well as in the reviews. But yeah, fantastic movie. At number 7 is Room, a smaller film that came out this year. It's not too many people actually saw this one, I don't think. It's one of those smaller, almost independent movies, but a huge surprise for me as well. It's gotten amazing reviews, and it's deserving of all of them. And it's one of those movies I don't really want to spoil too much of. It's one of those movies that really will surprise you with where it goes in terms of its... I don't know, it's just going to surprise you in terms of where it's going to go, where the movie goes. But I am going to give you like kind of a brief overview of what the movie's about. But basically, it's this... Brie Larson, I think her name is. She plays a character that's kind of been held captive in this room with her 5-year-old son, and this guy has kind of actually held her captive in this room, and she's not allowed out. And that's all I actually really want to say. But this movie's kind of surprised me. It's, again, like with Inside Out, it's a very moving movie. It's got a very strong emotional core, and it deals with some very interesting themes that I actually don't want to spoil. It's one of those movies that if you read about it, you'll get spoiled to where it kind of goes. And like this movie definitely surprised me in a lot of ways. It kind of sucks because I want to talk more about this movie, but I think it would be spoiling what makes it so special. So yeah, it can be a bit hard to watch at times. It's very tense as well, and it's brutal as well, very brutal. But Brie Larson gives like this amazing performance. Like the performances in general in this movie are outstanding. Like amazing stuff here. The dialogue is also very well written. Very, very great. Extremely surprising and strong emotional movie for sure. Definitely one of the best dramas of 2015. Highly recommended. I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard about it, but try to check it out. It's definitely worth your time. At number 6 is Mad Max Fury Road, one of the biggest movies of the year. Everyone fucking loves this movie, and with good reason. This is a fantastic movie, and it kind of a surprise for me because when Mad Max finally came back, it's one of those series that's been like dead for so long, and George Miller kind of brought it back. The original director of I think he did all 3 of the Mad Max movies, and I really was not expecting this to be that good. I really wasn't, and this blew me away. Now, there's definitely a few reasons for this. For one, I'm not crazy about action movies. I really feel like action movies were at their peak in like the 80s with stuff like Die Hard. Although, did that come out in the 80s? I think that came out late 80s or 1990. But I feel like action movies have been really terrible for a long time, and this just kind of brought them back. It reminds me a lot of like the 80s and early 90s action classics, 70s as well. Very light on exposition, which is one of my favorite things about it. It's able to tell its story without just fucking explaining everything to you. You're able to follow along and get the events that are happening and the story that's happening without being beaten over the head with needless dialogue, and it's fantastic. The action scenes here are just relentless and incredible, very intense, and pretty much all practical effects. No terrible CGI here. It's all extremely well done practical effects. It looks beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at. It's surprisingly emotional and moving. There's plenty of emotional moments here. The main story, it's not the most complex story ever, but it's involving. You definitely get to like these characters. Especially Furiosa. She's a fantastic character. Charlize Theron is like amazing in this movie. The performances are top notch overall, and what dialogue is here, what little dialogue is in this movie, is really well done as well. It's constantly entertaining. I don't think I was ever bored with this movie, and it's got really great world building as well. That's another thing that really surprised me about it. It's a very interesting world that that George Miller's got here. Mad Max is a series that I've liked. I've liked Mad Max Road Warrior in the original. Beyond Thunderdome, I didn't like that much, but I think this is better than all 3 of those other Mad Max movies combined. Like, I think this is like easily one of the best action movies ever made. It's probably the best action movie in the last, like, I want to say it's almost close to like 15 years. I can't even remember the last time where I've been this blown away by an action movie, but here we are. But nice surprise. I can't wait for, I think they're doing a sequel, George Miller's doing a sequel, but huge surprise for me, absolutely amazing. Most people have probably seen this by now, but if you haven't, what are you doing? Just like get off your ass and watch this movie. Trust me, I think anyone will love this movie, unless you just hate action movies, but I don't know. I kind of hate action movies, and this was amazing to me. So yeah, highly recommended. At number 5 is The End of the Tour, another smaller drama that came out this year, and it came out of nowhere for me and really surprised me. What it's about is you've got like a journalist, David Lipsky, I think his name, and this is based on a true story. And he's a journalist, and he's allowed to basically on assignment spend I think like, is it a week? All right, kind of follow the writer David Foster Wallace along on his like book tour that kind of follows the release of his book Infinite Jest, which was a huge book back in 1996. And David Foster Wallace, of course, is a pretty famous writer, and he committed suicide, I think, back in 2008, I think. And so this was 1996, and David Lipsky basically, he's a huge fan of Wallace, and he basically spends a week with him at his home and kind of follows him around in this book tour, and that's basically the plot. This is a very dialogue-driven movie. In fact, the entire movie is basically all dialogue, and it's some of the most fascinating and exciting dialogue I've heard all year. Like, this is easily my pick for the best written movie of 2015. I think the person who did the script for this movie is like someone that does, I think he does like plays, and you can tell because the writing is just fantastic here. But 2 very interesting characters played by Jesse Eisenberg plays David Lipsky, and Jason Segel plays David Foster Wallace, and both fantastic performances. But Jason Segel, like, he's known for comedy roles, but in this movie he's just fucking fantastic. And David Foster Wallace is one of those guys that like I had heard about, but I haven't looked too much into him. But based on this movie, I actually want to just read everything this guy's done now, and I've read actually a few of his essays now. But I really want to go out and read Infinite Jest, because if there's one thing about this movie, like, it's an amazing movie, I loved it, but the best thing about it is the fact that it made me want to read this book, because the book, I looked up like what it's about. It sounds very interesting. It's intimidating because this book is considered one of the most challenging books to read. Like, it's like over 1,000 pages, I think. Like, it's a huge book with like tons of footnotes with it, and it's very complex. But it sounds really interesting. And based on this movie, David Foster Wallace, I think, is a very interesting, or was a very interesting guy, and it's very sad what happened to him. But this movie tackles some themes that I think really hit home to me. This movie kind of spoke to me on a personal level that no other movie did this year. I think there's one movie that did in some ways, but this movie, almost everything about it spoke to me in a way that kind of, it really caught me off guard. I don't know, I thought it was a very kind of emotional, moving movie at a lot of points. Very funny too, but also quite sad and depressing as well. But yeah, David Foster Wallace, like watching this movie and kind of reading more about him afterwards, I think he's probably one of the more interesting human beings to have lived. Really fascinating guy with a lot of interesting things to say about society and the world. But yeah, phenomenal movie. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I don't think everyone's going to love this. If you're like, because like I said before, it's a very dialogue-driven movie, and some people might find it boring. But I thought it was thrilling throughout. And yeah, sad, and definitely tackles some themes that, like I said before, kind of hit close to home for me. So yeah, again, a smaller film, but definitely, if it sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. And if you're a David Foster Wallace fan, you've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, definitely check it out. Definitely worth watching. At number 4 is Anomalisa, another surprise for me. This is a film written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, one of the more well-regarded writers in Hollywood. And his movies, I gotta say, I've been a bit mixed on them over the years. I haven't seen, what's that movie, Synecdoche, New York, I think. I haven't seen that movie. I don't know if I would like that, but adaptation, I did not care for, honestly. Being John Malkovich, I thought was alright. It was interesting, but I didn't love it. And then Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I do like. I don't love it as much as a lot of people do, but I do like it. But I think this is actually my favorite of his movies that he's done, or at least written. And this was a huge surprise for me. It's got a very striking look to it because it's puppets. It's not actual. It's not a live action film. It's all done with puppets. But the environments, like the buildings here, are all like very lifelike. I don't know if they're actually real buildings. They might be. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into the filming of this movie all that much. But apparently it took a long time to get this film done. And it's got, yeah, a very striking look to it that I thought really helped the movie. And there's some really interesting kind of visual and audio motifs that kind of go throughout this film that I don't actually want to spoil, because I think that's part of the reason why this movie is so fascinating to me. The story is basically about this guy. His name's Michael Stone. He's kind of like a middle-aged guy that's just, he hates life. He finds everything mundane and boring and samey, and it's just, he just really despises life. And he's this guy that's kind of written this book about customer service and helping customers and you know, seeing the good in people, which, yeah, is very ironic. But he kind of meets this girl at this hotel in Cincinnati, where he's doing I think a public speaking presentation, and he meets this girl that he just finds fascinating, and she's you know, she kind of is extraordinary to him, and that's kind of where it goes. It goes to some interesting places after that, but it's kind of a romance story. But where this movie kind of goes, it goes to some very interesting, unexpected places. I thought this was going to be kind of a generic romance movie, just with some interesting characters and an interesting look to it. But it's much more than that. It's a very sad, depressing movie for sure. Very dialogue driven as well. There's some cheesy scenes here and there, but overall, I thought it really, again, like with the end of the tour, this is the other movie that spoke to me on a personal level. Not all of it. Some of it didn't really connect with me, but I really is one of those movies where after I stopped watching it, when it ended, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Days after, I just couldn't stop thinking about the different themes in this movie and kind of where it went off. And these characters, I think these characters are just very interesting. And it's a unique movie. There's nothing quite like it in terms of 2015, and it really surprised me in that way. Yeah, highly recommended. Again, it's a movie that I don't think is going to be for everyone. I think some people are going to hate it. I don't think everyone's going to love this movie, even though it actually reviewed really well. But it definitely surprised me. Again, I think 2015 is one of those years where a lot of movies just kind of surprised me, because this is one of those movies where when I saw trailers, like, it looked interesting, but I didn't think I was going to love it. But yeah, I really did. Definitely worth seeking out. At number 3 is Spotlight, and this is probably the movie that's going to win Best Picture at the Oscars. A lot of buzz, awards buzz for this movie, and with good reason. This movie really, like, I love this movie, and this was one of those movies that I knew when I saw, like, the actors in it and what it was about, I knew I was going to love it, because it tackles something that I've seen before in a documentary that I really loved. But what this movie is about is the Spotlight team at the Boston Globe newspaper, and this is like an investigative journalism unit, and it's basically about their look into child sex abuse cases in the Catholic Church in the Boston area, and they kind of blow that open and find out that the Archdiocese and the Catholic Church in general is kind of hiding this stuff and transferring priests over to other areas. And this is a pretty brutal movie. It's hard to watch at times, and the subject matter is quite lurid. But it's one of those stories that needs to be told, and it really shows the power of good investigative journalism, and it's something that's very important. And I think if there's a movie that came out in 2015 that I would say, well, there's two that I would say you absolutely need to see, it would be this one. Very strong performances across the board, a great ensemble cast. Michael Keaton is fantastic in this. Mark Ruffalo is, I think, the standout actor in here. Amazing performances across the board. The dialogue is very authentic and really good dialogue here. And it covers a story that's just really, it's just fucking sickening. I mean, I've seen this stuff kind of before in a documentary called, what was it called? Mea Maxima Culpa: The Silence in the House of God, I think. And yeah, like, it's disgusting, this shit. And there's some scenes in here that I don't want to spoil that really just highlight just the awfulness of this whole situation. And it's one of those things that's always really bothered me, and it's a story that I think obviously a lot of people have heard of the stories by now, but this just kind of shows like just how far it went, as far as to getting into like the Vatican and stuff like that, and it just shows just how vile and morally reprehensible the Catholic Church's actions were behind this. So yeah, it's one of those movies that's just really well acted, well written. And powerful, but shows a story that's true and extremely important. At the same time, it doesn't show these guys in this investigative unit as like these like heroes or whatever. Like, they're not like these like I don't know. The way that the film works is just really. I don't know. It just works, man. It's really good. It's really very surprising. So. Yeah, it's actually one of the smaller movies. I don't think it did extremely well commercially, but I think it's definitely absolutely everyone needs to see this movie. And it's a very powerful movie that I think is easily one of the best of 2015. At number 2 is The Hateful Eight, and this movie was actually my number 1 movie for most of the year, actually. Since it came out, it was my favorite of the year. Until a certain movie actually came out and beat it, but Tarantino's newest movie, and he's one of my favorite directors. I pretty much love every movie he's done, and I'm always excited. It's always an event when a Tarantino movie comes out, and yeah, I fucking love this movie. It's a bit odd, though, because the reviews have been fairly, it's gotten good reviews, but not as good reviews as most of his movies. In fact, I think this might be his lowest rated movie since Death Proof, and which is really weird to me, because I actually think this is one of my favorite movies that he's done. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's the least in my top 3, and I can't wait to see it again. It's one of those movies that I think I'm going to watch many times and enjoy it more every time I see it. But I love this movie. It's a fun fucking movie. It's not like it's just so entertaining. But basically, it's kind of a Western mystery movie where you have all these characters that kind of get holed in this like cabin in this middle of this blizzard, and they're kind of trapped there. And Kurt Russell's character is kind of like a bounty hunter of sorts, and he's got this girl with him, this female character. I forget what's her name, Daisy or Rosie, I think. I forget what her name was, but she's basically a criminal, and he's got her for a bounty. He needs her alive, and basically it's all these characters. It's kind of one of those movies where there's a lot of paranoia between all the characters, and it just ratchets up and gets more insane the longer the movie goes on. Now, as with any Tarantino movie, it's got tons of stylistic violence. It's very brutal, but it's also very talky as well. If you're one of those people that, again, doesn't like a whole lot of dialogue, I could see then in that situation where it could be maybe a bit boring. But honestly, the dialogue here, as with every Tarantino movie, it's some of the best dialogue ever. Like, the dialogue is so good. This movie, I was never bored with this movie. It's almost 3 hours long, which a lot of people are complaining about the length. I didn't find it long at all. I didn't think it dragged at any point, and it just gets more exciting and more crazy. Some of the shit in this movie just was like, I was like, wow. But yeah, really, it's easily the most entertaining movie of the year. Well, okay, the second most entertaining movie of the year. Some very interesting twists and turns. The soundtrack is fucking phenomenal. I can't pronounce the guy's name, but it's a guy that I think apparently hasn't done a score for a movie in a very long time, especially for Western. He's known for a lot of his old Western soundtracks, and the score in this is just incredible from the very first song that you hear. And I think Tarantino is usually a guy that picks his licensed music for his movies, so it was definitely an interesting stylistic choice and something that he doesn't really do all that much. So I thought it gave the movie an interesting flavor. It's definitely a unique movie as well, because it reminds me in some ways, of John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982, one of my favorite horror movie of all time. So obviously I was going to like this. And it's just, again, some very surprising twists and turns, some really... I don't know. It's a very entertaining movie. I loved it from start to finish. The dialogue is great. The characters are fantastic. The humor is great too. It's a hilarious movie. I laughed multiple times throughout this movie. I honestly can't think of anything bad to say about it. I really can't. I loved it. I loved it completely. I don't know if I would say it's my favorite Tarantino movie. I need to see it more, but I still think Django Unchained is probably my favorite, but it's probably my second or third favorite. Like, it's right up there with Pulp Fiction for me, which some people would find that crazy, but I just fucking love this movie. I thought it was amazing, so yeah, definitely see it. See this movie. It's great. And finally, at number 1, my favorite movie of 2015, The Big Short. And this is actually the last movie of the year that I saw. I saw this not too long ago. I was trying to finish up all the movies that came out in 2015 that I wanted to see. And this is one of those movies that, as soon as I saw the trailers and saw what it was about, I was like, yep, I want to see that. That sounds amazing. And this movie completely blew me away. I was not expecting to like this near as much as I did, even though I knew I would love it. And in fact, not only is this my favorite movie of 2015, it's one of my favorite movies of like the past 5 years. Like, I thought this was fantastic. It's based on a book, and what it's about is these guys that actually were able to figure out that the financial crisis of like 2007 to 2008 was going to happen. These guys figured this shit out way before, and they kind of got rich off of it. And it kind of looks at how that financial crisis happened, what kind of built up to it. And that's kind of the story it tells with these characters. And it's a very informative movie with a very important message. And it shows you this, the build up to this financial crisis. And it does it in some really entertaining ways. It makes it exciting and fun and thrilling. Because it's one of those things where it's a subject that's very complex, and a lot of different crazy terms that are thrown around, and it's one of those things that if you read about it, it'll take a long time to learn. And the movie explains things in some really funny ways, where these key terms and things that I didn't even know about, like CDOs and subprime loans. and it tells you these things like in one of the scenes it has like the girl from Wolf of Wall Street, I forget what her name is, Margot Robbie, I think, like naked in a bathtub explaining some of this shit to you. The film's style is very very kind of I don't want to say bombastic, but it's like really in your face and energetic. And the whole movie has this brisk pace to it. It has this sense of humor about it that's just it's so endearing, and like it really gets you, man. Like I was so into this movie while watching it. Like I was just so involved with what was happening on screen. The editing in this film is fantastic. Really quick, fast-paced editing, like it's just got this style to it that's just frantic and energetic that I just absolutely loved it. There's like the writing in this is top notch. It's extremely funny, but also it's got its dramatic elements. And there's some scenes in this movie that are just they're actually kind of heartbreaking in some ways, because it really does deal with like the awful parts of the financial crisis and how people got affected by it in some really depressing and sad ways. And I feel like I learned so much watching this movie while at the same time being so entertained by it. And it's one of those things where at the end of the movie, I started consuming anything about this financial crisis and how it got built up. And I watched this documentary called Inside Job about this shit, and it's such a fascinating subject, and I gotta say, this movie got me so into it. The performances are amazing across the board. Christian Bale plays this really interesting character that it was hilarious because this character was so much like me. It was absolutely hilarious, but a lot of interesting characters with some interesting character quirks. Steve Carell in this movie is amazing. He started to get into some more dramatic roles lately, but this is easily his best. A really interesting character with a lot of different layers, and definitely some interesting things going on with his life. And yeah, some really fascinating, interesting scenes in here. Who else is in this movie? Ryan Gosling is quite good in this movie as well. Brad Pitt is in the movie, but not all that much. But his character is really interesting. Again, it shows this financial crisis and how it built up, all these like different things that built up to it, and it just shows so much surrounding it and gets into so many different topics and themes, and all of it is so interesting and so entertaining. Man, I just fucking love this movie, and I can't wait to see it again. I'm going to be seeing this multiple times. It might be a movie that I don't think it's going to be everyone's favorite movie of the year, but it's just one of those movies that the subject matter I just found so enthralling, and the movie style just worked for me, and I was just so entertained and like it just so involved with what was going on here that I just loved it from start to finish. It's not too long. I don't think it's too long that either. I don't think the pacing drags in any spot. Fantastic movie. Definitely go see this. It's also like Spotlight. It's something that I think everyone needs to see. Very interesting stuff. Phenomenal movie. Definitely my favorite of 2015. And actually, something I forgot to mention about The Big Short, it really shows how fucked up the financial services industry is in the United States, and how strong of a political pull it has. And it was especially frustrating to see, actually, and this was an inside job, the Obama administration, how like they took a bunch of people from these banks, CEOs and people that made so much money off this shit and didn't go to jail or anything like that, and they're in government now. It's really fucked up. I forgot to mention that it's The Big Short's one of those movies that will really infuriate you when you watch it. But yeah, that's it, guys. Those are my top 10 movies. So now we'll get into some honorable mentions and the movies that I hated of 2015. So let's see what do we got. We've got Sicario. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sicario. I don't know. But that's one of those movies that looks at kind of like the Mexican cartels. And that's a very intense, really violent movie. Some really shocking stuff in there. I thought I don't know. I thought it was a bit dry and dull at times, but it's definitely a really good movie, a really well done movie. And the director of that, I forget what his name is, but he did Prisoners and Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's a director to watch. He's always done some really interesting movies, and I really did enjoy that movie. I think it's still one of the better movies of 2015. It was close to making the list. Everest is actually surprisingly good. I've always been interested in those kind of sad disaster stories, real life disaster stories, and I think that was a well done movie. It's not the most amazing movie, but it was well done. I liked it. Ant-Man was surprisingly good. I actually liked that movie quite a bit. Probably my favorite Marvel movie in a long time. I hate Marvel movies, but that one, there's something about it. The humor that it had, and it didn't take itself too seriously. I don't know. I kind of liked that movie. It wasn't amazing or anything, but it was a nice surprise. The Gift is a really interesting movie. I don't really want to spoil too much on that one, but definitely go see it. I think that movie might surprise you. Straight Outta Compton. As someone that hates hip hop and rap, I was shocked at how much I enjoyed that movie. Not enough to make the list, but it was still enjoyable. I think it was a little too long. That movie just was a little too long for its own good, but it was entertaining. It was well done. I was kind of shocked at how much I enjoyed that one. Beast of No Nation, which was a movie that was only on Netflix. Very, very brutal, shocking movie that shows an interesting and important story. That's another movie that I think if you have Netflix, you should definitely go and see that one. Black Mass, I thought was a solid mob movie with a good Johnny Depp performance. I didn't love it, but I thought it was solid. I know a lot of people didn't like that one too much, but I still liked it. The Walk with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I thought that was actually a really entertaining movie. The second half was definitely better than the first, but and I think the stuff it shows you can see it in a better film, the documentary Man on Wire. But still, The Walk was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. Bridge of Spies, a very underrated movie of 2015, and I think it's Spielberg's best movie in a long time. I haven't liked a movie of his this much in quite a while, but that was another movie that was close to making the list. It would probably be like at 12 or something like that, but I really enjoyed that one. Definitely worth watching. And I guess, finally, the big movie, the one that everybody loves and everybody saw, it's making a shit ton of money. Of course, Star Wars The Force Awakens, which I enjoyed. I gotta say, I liked it. But this is coming from someone that's not crazy about Star Wars. I just don't have the adoration and nostalgia for that series that a lot of people do. I mean, I enjoy the original trilogy. I like it. I don't love it, and I still stand by the fact that the prequels are garbage. I know a lot of people like those. I just cannot, no one's going to convince me that those are good movies. I firmly believe, those are just awful movies. I gotta also recommend, a lot of people have seen these by now, but the Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews of those three movies. After watching those, I can't possibly convince myself that those are good movies. They are so flawed and so, I just hate them, but the original trilogy is enjoyable enough. But Force Awakens, I really enjoyed. I think it does stick a little too closely to A New Hope, and it's a little safe for my tastes, but it was entertaining. There's a few parts that I thought were kind of dull. Very action-packed. It's easily the most action-packed Star Wars movie. Tons of action, and it's all really well done, but it's enjoyable. I liked it. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the movie. It might even be my second favorite Star Wars movie after Empire Strikes Back, but I didn't think it was the best thing ever, like a lot of people did. I certainly didn't. It would probably make around 13 or 14 on my, if there's a top 20 of 2015. I definitely enjoyed it. It's certainly not a bad film by any means. I know it's probably like a hipster thing to hate on that movie, but it's really not that bad. Yeah, I didn't love it as much as most people. And the worst movies, only 5 I could think of that I didn't like. And there's some movies that got amazing reviews that I'm just not interested in. The big one is Brooklyn, which is it looked like a generic romance movie. And again, I'm not into romance movies all that much. But the bad movies, Chappie, holy fuck, I hated this movie. This movie was fucking trash. And again, Neil Blomkamp, I think that's how you pronounce his name. This is the guy that did District 9, which I fucking loved. And now he's done 2 terrible movies in a row. Well, okay, Elysium wasn't terrible, but it was disappointing, and I really didn't think it was that great. But this, ugh, I hated this movie. So irritating. Everything about it was just irritating. The plot was just like it was so heavy-handed. It has these humorous elements that I think did not work at all. And it had the music in it was fucking atrocious. Like I know a lot of people like the music group Die Antwoord or whatever, but the whole movie was just a music video for them, for their music. And I just can't stand their music. And like everything about that movie just rubbed me the wrong way. I hated every second of it. I could not stand it. Easily, okay, not the worst movie of the year since I did actually at least watch the whole thing. There's a couple of movies I stopped watching halfway through. Another one is, and this movie, a lot of people love it. I just could not get into it, and that movie is Carol. I don't know. Again, I'm not crazy about romance movies, and I really think if you removed the lesbian angle from that, the fact that it was a lesbian romance story, you'd have like a generic, predictable love story. And I don't know. I got halfway through that movie. I was like, nope, not for me. Not watching the rest of it. Not my type of movie at all. And that got amazing reviews. I don't know where the praise comes from for that movie, but yeah, did not like it. Jurassic World I thought was really bad. I know that was a huge movie. I thought it started off okay. Like, it started off not too bad, but it just got worse and worse, and by the end I was hating it. Like, that movie got so fucking stupid towards the end. Like, ugh. I don't know. I think that movie is the worst Jurassic Park movie. I think that's worse than, like, Jurassic Park 3 and 2, which a lot of people hate, but I don't know. I really did not care for Jurassic World. American Ultra, which is like this weird-ass movie. I got about 30 minutes into it and I shut it off. I was like, this is fucking terrible. I can't watch this. Like, this was bad. So that's, yeah, another movie I could get through. And finally, the only other movie is the David O. Russell film Joy with Jennifer Lawrence, which was just a mess of a movie. Like, it's this weird movie where it's like, at a lot of points it tries to be this weird, absurdist comedy, and it just does not work. Like, all the family drama stuff in that movie did not work, even though the actual story in that movie is interesting. I feel like that's a movie that could have been a lot better if it had a different director. David O. Russell, I think he's probably one of the most overrated directors, honestly. I don't think I've ever loved a movie he's done. Like, Three Kings is, I think, the only movie he's done that I would say I outright loved. The rest of his movies I thought were good, if overrated. The Fighter was pretty good, but, like, American Hustle I thought was overrated. And Silver Linings Playbook, I just hated. I hated that movie. Every second of it, I couldn't stand it. But yeah, Joy, there's some good aspects to Joy, but overall, I thought it was a mess of a movie. Not worth watching, in my opinion. But yeah, that's it, guys. There's obviously a lot of movies I've probably missed out on. Again, I don't watch a lot of, like, the big action movies, so there's probably some I missed on there. And like I said, like, the Avengers just didn't interest me. A lot of Disney movies didn't interest me, but if you can think of any that maybe I would have watched, definitely let me know. Unfortunately, again, foreign films is another category that I didn't see too many. Son of Saul actually looked pretty good, kind of a Holocaust movie, but I didn't get around to seeing that. But yeah, that's it, guys. This video is much longer than I thought it would be, but yeah, what are some of your favorite movies of 2015? If there's any of these that you really want to see, or have seen, what did you think of them? What are some of the worst movies you've seen? Definitely let me know. I'm very, very curious to know. But yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.